What's up, everyone? Welcome to This Day in Philly Sports History for May 16th, 2023. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. For those watching on YouTube, I do apologize for the lighting. I feel I'm still working through it. I think I have it narrowed down that it's probably my camera. Time to upgrade on that, but we'll get there. Before we get into today's episode, it is Tuesday, so we'll have our daily or weekly dose of motivation / positivity. But before that, I wanted to say, for those of you listening on Spotify, thank you. We went over 1,000 listens yesterday, and I'm just thrilled. I started this one day before work on a whim in October as a branch off of Back to the Future, my weekly podcast, and it's grown into what it is today. Definitely that one of the things I look forward to the most every day is doing this and spending some time with you guys each morning. It's also allowed me to sort of branch out and do other things with Back to the Future now that I have the daily platform. But 1,000 listens, that's great. I appreciate it. Thank you. Let's go for 1,000 more. Tell your friends, tell coworkers, whoever you think might be interested in this. Spread the word. Let's kind of grow this thing. We've done a lot in a short amount of time, so I'm very excited about what this summer, when I do have a little bit more time to focus on things, is going to bring. But I thank you guys all from the bottom of my heart. I truly, truly appreciate it. Never in my wildest dreams would I imagine. And I still think this is just the beginning. We're on to something big here. I'm excited to see what the future brings. But all of you listening on Spotify, thank you for 1,000 listens. If you're listening somewhere else, thank you too. I appreciate that as well. All right, so as I mentioned, it is Tuesday. And I think this little saying is appropriate, especially given what just transpired the other day with the Sixers. But every day is a new beginning. You just need to take a deep breath, smile, and start over again. And yes, it hurts. Yes, it's painful. We've been through a lot over the past 6 months, between the Union losing on penalty kicks, the Phillies losing the same day in the World Series after having a lead, the Eagles losing in the Super Bowl after they had a lead and seemed like they were in control, and now the Sixers losing to Boston in Game 7 of the Eastern Conference semifinals after being up 3-2. It's been a lot, Philly, and I don't know. I have some ideas floating in my head for future episodes of Back to the Future to discuss this, but listen, as I don't know who said it, may have been Shakespeare or somebody, but it's better to have loved and lost than never loved at all. I guess it's better to have been there than to not been there at all. I'll have to look that up. I think it's Shakespeare. But either way, every day is a new beginning. Today's a new day. Just breathe, smile, and let's go through our day, people. It's going to be okay. We're going to be fine. The Sixers are totally going to look different next year, but that's okay. Every day is a new beginning. Let's just keep that mantra. We talked last week about recalibrating our energy, so we can recalibrate. But each day, if you can't recalibrate, each day is a new beginning. Take a deep breath. Start over. Speaking of starting over, we've been talking a lot about our friends over at phillygoat.com. And I've talked a lot about their selection of Sixers shirts, other sports teams too. But you have to go there today to check it out. I don't know how long these are going to last, but I noticed last night they sent me an email. They're getting into the spirit. They have 3 brand new t-shirts that I absolutely love. There's one that says 86, the 76ers. Another one that's just simply Fire Doc. And then the Philadelphia second round Exeters. If you can't laugh at yourself, who can you laugh at? Go to phillygoat.com. Check out these shirts. I'm definitely going to be picking the 86, the 76ers one. I absolutely love that shirt. Check out the design. It's the 86 is in the Sixers writing and everything. But go check them out today for, again, if we can't laugh at ourselves, what fun is it? It's a new beginning, an opportunity to just say, you know what, Boston? Yeah, we get it. F you too. But go to phillygoat.com. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery at checkout for 10% off of your order. These shirts are amazing. Again, I don't know if they're for a limited time or how long they're going to last, but they were incredible when I saw them. So go check them out. phillygoat.com. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery for 10% off of your order. All right. quick housekeeping. I mentioned Back to the Future. I recorded and posted the Eagles schedule prediction show last night. Be sure to check that out wherever you get your podcast, as well as YouTube. See where I think the Eagles are going to go. Everybody says the schedule's harder, but we're a Super Bowl team. And I think in some respects, if things play out with the way the draft picks and everything, we could be a better team. So go see what I have to say. That's Back to the Future with a PH wherever you get your podcast, as well as YouTube. Final thing on the Sixers for right now, and again, I'm going to take my own advice here on a Tuesday and just new beginning. Not going to dwell on it anymore. But I saw a lot of things. It does appear that Harden is probably going to go to Houston. It does also seem that him and Doc, there's reports now that Harden will not play for Doc. If they're going to get rid of Doc, do we want Harden back? I mean, if veterans minimum, maybe. I'm not paying a ridiculous amount for him for what he did and how he showed up. The other key thing I saw a lot of is Tobias Harris will be probably a prime trade candidate for a team that's looking to rebuild, that can take on some salary and an expiring contract, that should give the Sixers some flexibility with their cap. The NBA has the weirdest cap system of all the sports, so I'm not really sure. Obviously, they need to take on some salary. I'm not sure. So we might be taking a step back next year in order to improve in the future. But that's what they pay Elton Brand, Daryl Morey, those guys, the big money for it. Let them figure it out. But I, at this point, I would say everybody is expendable if you're going to make the team better, even Joe at this point. And everybody's talking about the process. The process died back when they got rid of Sam Hinkie and Colangelo came in and all that bullshit happened with his burner Twitter accounts where he's trying to turmoil the team from the inside, took Tatum or passed on Tatum. And again, I had a conversation in one of my text chains about this with guys, and yeah, like it's doesn't make any sense to say, oh well, they could have had Tatum, but they took Fultz instead and they traded with the Celtics. Yeah, I mean, the Celtics wanted Tatum the whole time, but to me, it still doesn't add up because you had Colangelo with all of that going on where we were forced to get rid of Hinkie and the NBA's handpicked guy came in and all of a sudden traded with Boston. And yeah, that's who Ainge wanted the whole time. We got fleeced, but was the NBA? I don't know. There's a lot of shadiness. And to me, when one of your bitter rivals are willing to trade with you, like for their top pick in the draft, it raises some red flags to me. Like, I wouldn't expect the Cowboys or the Giants to be trading us the first overall pick in the NFL draft. It's just kind of shady, but hey, we move on. It's a new day, new beginning. I'm anxious to see where they go. I've talked a lot about this. The Sixers are my team. Obviously, I'm a huge Eagles fan. The Phillies were my first love, but these Sixers team, man, like I supported them when they were terrible in the 90s. Like, this is the team I want to see do well. I want to see be good and actually have a legitimate shot. Not like in 2001 where it was just a special team that you knew they were going to run into the buzzsaw that was the Lakers. I want somebody that has a legitimate shot. I want to go to a Sixers parade. All right? Is that too much to ask? I don't know. Phils with a tough one last night. 6-3 loss out on the West Coast to the Giants. If you missed it, you didn't miss much. The offense can't knock in runners all of a sudden. I think they had like 8 more left in scoring position. Bailey Falter gave up 6 runs in the 3rd inning. There were some errors, so they were unearned, but poor guy cannot catch a break. And again, it goes back to the Little League theory I was talking about last week. They gave up the one bad inning, and then the rest of the game they didn't give up a run. So they lost 6-3 after giving up 6 runs in the 2nd inning. It's tough to win if you're constantly having to dig out of a hole. I don't know what they're going to do with that 5th starter spot, but they need to figure it out and figure it out fast. But today we're going to shift gears a little bit and kind of stick with the whole new beginnings thing. And on this day, back in 1974, May 16th, 1974, the Wings played the Maryland Arrows, the Philadelphia Wings, in the first National League lacrosse game in their history, which actually was the first ever professional men's lacrosse game in the United States. The Wings lost that game 17-14. A couple days later, they would make their debut in Philly at the Spectrum. Ironically enough, the Stanley Cup final was in the afternoon. Flyers won to beat the Bruins to win the Stanley Cup. They covered up the ice. It set it up to be a lacrosse field, and the Wings played that night at the Spectrum, and actually had a pretty decent crowd that night as well. So that's a pretty cool story. They made the championship that year, lost to the Rochester Griffins. 3 teams, though, went bankrupt after that season, and the league folded. You might remember it came back in the 80s with Jake Berge being on the Wings. The Wings were one of the only original team from the 70s that came back in the 80s. They were one of the best. They were probably I remember them being very popular in Philly, and I think due to the fact that we were starving for a championship and they were winning championships. So at that time, if you remember before the Phillies won the World Series, we were like talking about having parades for Smarty Jones, for the Philadelphia Soul. Like it was bad. Like you think it's bad now. Like we were ready to have a parade down Broad Street for a fucking horse. So there you go. They did ultimately move to Connecticut. The Wings now are back in Philly, and these new Wings aren't technically the same team as they were an expansion team. They came back into play in 2008. But one of the more popular second-tier sports teams in Philly, I would say, are the Philadelphia Wings. But on this day in 2016, they lost to the Maryland, the Maryland Arrows 17-14 in the first ever professional lacrosse game in the United States. All right, finally the Sixers playoff spotlight. We're going to look at the 1976-77 Sixers. They went 50-32. They were the Atlantic Division champions, the number 1 seed in the conference. This was Dr. J's first year. They bought him for $6 million from the Nets. $3 million went to Dr. J. $3 million went to the Nets, helped pay for their entry fee into the NBA. We mentioned this before, but I think it's worth mentioning again because it's one of the more random cool stories in sports. The Sixers are directly responsible for the Nets being in the NBA. Dr. J joined that team, who already had George McGinnis, who was a high scorer from the ABA, who came in the year before. Henry Bibby was on that team. Kobe Bryant's dad, Joe. Doug Collins, Darryl Dawkins, Caldwell Jones, World Be Free. The mayor, Steve Mix. I just love calling him the mayor. I miss him as one of the guys on. I like Allah, don't get me wrong, but Steve Mix and Mark Zumoff were who I just remember growing up on. Dr. J and George McGinnis both went to the All-Star game. Dr. J was the MVP. Both of them finished second team All-NBA that year. They beat Boston in the conference semifinals that year in 7 games. Then they beat the Houston Rockets 4-2 in the Eastern Conference Final. Remember, this was a time when the ABA was folding into the NBA. So there were a lot of teams that we now know as West Coast teams that were in the East and vice versa. Same thing happened in the NHL. Then they went on to the NBA Finals and lost to the Portland Trailblazers 4-2. The Trailblazers were led by, and I can't think of his name now. Oh my goodness, why can't I think of his name? It'll come to me. But the worst part about that series was the Sixers were up 2-0 and then blew it. They won the first 2 games and then just completely fell apart. But they were just a sign of things to come. They would eventually get to the NBA championship. Unfortunately, it just was a blip in a long line of disappointing losses for the Sixers as a team. Somebody on one of my text chains mentioned, and I can't get it out of my head now, the fact that we're like the Dallas Cowboys of the NBA. Great regular season team, can't do anything in the playoffs. I've heard that from a few people. Very disappointing to hear. But this goes back. I mean, this is kind of the history of the team going back to the 60s with the Celtics, and then the 70s. It started here. Dr. J, they had a championship team, go up 2-0 on Bill Walton was the guy's name. Bill Walton and the Portland Trailblazers, only to lose 4 straight. It's one of those things with the franchise. But we're going to keep it positive because today's a new day, new beginning. Take a deep breath, start over. But on this day, back in 1974, the Philadelphia Wings played in the first ever professional lacrosse game in the United States. Tough loss for the Phillies. Thank you so much, Spotify listeners, for getting us over 1,000. I can't wait for the next 1,000. Go to phillygoat.com and check out those shirts before they sell out. Promo code Jim Montgomery. Go. Have yourselves a Tuesday. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History. I'm Jim Montgomery, and until next time, I'll see you when I see you.